help you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Free your goals, live out the dream. It's right now. Inspirational perspective. Open your mind to a better life. It's time to live. Let's find your purpose now. Inspirational perspective. Let's slay your goals, let your greatness flow. With inspirational perspective.
Good morning, Chicago. You're listening to Inspirational Perspective. I'm your host, Linal Harris, your very own life coach, right here on WVON 1690 AM, the talk of Chicago. Inspirational Perspective on your radio is all about murdering mediocrity and living the best life possible. So as I ask you every Sunday morning, are you living the best life possible? And this is the place to be to explore that possibility. Well, good Sunday morning, everyone. Incredibly excited to be on the air and back in the studio again this morning. And as always, we have another phenomenal topic for you. We've been covering the fundamentals of life. The fundamentals of life. And we've covered quite a few fundamentals already, the fundamentals of health and well-being with Dr. Terry Mason, the fundamentals of relationships and love with relationship expert and coach, Love McPherson. And then last week, I had WVON's own attorney Ernest B. Fenton in the studio. We talked about the fundamentals of building a high quality of life. And he shared some of his own fundamentals about work and money with us. And that was a great show, fantastic show. And I'm incredibly excited this morning to share the guest and the show topic today, which is a deep dive into the fundamentals of money. Money, 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 money. And man, this is not a topic that I don't think anyone really talks about often. Like money. What are the fundamentals of money? What is money? How do you manage money? How do you grow money? How do you properly utilize money? And I'm excited about my guest this morning. Her name is Tanya Van Court. She's the CEO of Goalsetter. And I'll share a bit more about her when she comes on. She'll be with us at the bottom of the hour. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about this whole concept of money. And you know, I right away I had to go back to my early years, and I remember the first time I think about money, I think about money mistakes. Right, turning 18 years old. Realizing that, wait a second, they said I'm eligible, and I qualify for this thing called a credit card. What is this? And filling out credit cards, right? Realizing that, oh man, I can spend up to $600 on this little plastic card. And in many ways, that was my first experience of not properly using money. And before that, I had odd and end jobs, and I understood that if you work hard, you can get money, you can exchange that money for goods and services that you needed. As a matter of fact, I remember the first time I was really, really motivated to get out and work, and that's because my parents wouldn't buy something that I felt I needed, which was more of a want than a need. They made sure my needs were handled. And so I decided, hey, if I want to get what I want, that means I need to figure out how to generate this thing called money. Got my first job, age of 14 years old, painting curbs and street lines with a work permit for the village I lived in, and never stopped working after that. And I've spent, since then, the last 30 years of my life working in exchange for this thing we call money. So what is money? What is money all about? And Tanya and I, we're going to cover that today. We're going to talk a lot about that. But more than anything, I want us, before she joins, to really get connected to the core of what money is and how it can serve us. And so I'm reading this book. I meant to grab the book and put it, but it's by Yuval Harari, called Money. Phenomenal book. And I love how the book opens, because part of what Yuval is trying to really help us understand is that money is really an exchange product. And he opens the book talking about the bartering system, and how the bartering system was the way that we exchanged value many years ago. And why we don't use that system anymore. And just the long and short of it is, think about it right now. Like, what is it that you do for a living? And is there a way for you to tangibly exchange the value that you provide with someone else without the use of money? For most of us, when you start thinking about the societies we live in and how complex they are, money has become an incredibly valuable tool. Years ago, if I was an apple farmer, then I would grow apples, and I would exchange those apples maybe for cattle and for skins and for the other things that I need. But apples are only good for so long, which means that even if I could provide a high level of value for a short period of time, well, money is still a better system for me. Why is that? Because money has three basic purposes. Money is, one, a medium of exchange. So now I don't have to take that product or that service that I provide and try to exchange that with everyone else for the things that I need. Today, when I think about what I do, I offer a value of awareness, of coaching and training, the ability to take a look at yourself, but then also change these things about yourself that you want to transform, that you want to see transform, whether it's your health and well-being, whether it's how you evaluate relationship, whether it's, in many ways, the relationship you have with money. Or identify your purpose on the planet so you can be more fulfilled and more clear about what it is that you're doing. But how do I exchange that service? If we were back in the days of bartering, I would have to exchange that service for apples and cattle and pigs and things like that. And let's say I have way too many apples. Well, then I couldn't serve, or I wouldn't, in many ways, serve that individual. And that's the beauty of money. The second reason, or the second purpose of money, is that it is a store of value. And so now I can store value in a computer and technology, which is new in terms of the last few generations. Or I can store it in a safe. And that money, for the most part, take inflation out, will retain its value. And then last but not least, the purpose of money is a unit of account. So it's something that we can use to evaluate the goods and cost of a service. And I'm sharing that because when you begin to talk about money, I've learned as a coach and someone that's been supporting people for quite some time that there are a lot of different beliefs and ways of thinking about money. As a matter of fact, I've learned that many people would share with me the intimate details of their sex life before they begin to go into who it is and how it is that they make money, or how much money they have. Money is one of the things that makes us wonky. It makes us just a little bit crazy. As a matter of fact, many beliefs are wrapped around money early on as children. For instance, money is the root of all evil. Now, imagine if that's a belief that you have mapped onto yourself. Well, it's very likely, if you believe that deeply, that you don't have a lot of money, because most of us, we don't want to be considered evil. And so today, one of the things I want you to think about as I dive into this conversation with Tanya Van Court is, what are your money beliefs? what are the things that drive your relationship with money? But even more than that, when we talk about the 5 fundamentals that she's going to share, like the top 5 fundamentals that she wants to share with us about money, and she's very well qualified, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Why do these fundamentals matter to you? And if for any reason you struggle or you resist in a particular area, you may want to ask yourself why. And more than anything, get present to your deep money beliefs. What are your deep money beliefs? And consider this, that many of your deep money beliefs are playing out right now in your current wealth or lack thereof. And so if you find yourself on the other side of this, on the latter side of this, where you're like, Linal, I don't have wealth. I don't feel privileged when it comes to money. As a matter of fact, money's been something that I found to be incredibly difficult to manage over the years. Then what I would suggest is using this conversation as the way to really challenge what you believe about money. Because here's the one thing that I know. I grew up in a modest home, lower middle class home. My father was the only person working in that home. And there were 6 of us. And my parents provided for me a very good life. My mom was the money manager in the home, and I can recall her sitting at the dining room table with the checkbook and all the bills out. Her and my dad having conversations. And to be completely transparent, sometimes I remember there was tension in those conversations about money, about how they would pay the bills. My mother taught us very, very early on how to value money and how to look for ways to stretch your money as far as you can. One of the things I didn't learn, and this is nothing towards my parents, because I don't think they knew, and this is something I believe that my mom knows now, is how to create the ability to go out and make money. And again, that's a skill set. I did learn, however, to her credit, how to save money. And later, in my mid-20s, I learned how to grow money. And I believe that money, ultimately, you want to look at your money in 3 different ways. The first is, how am I spending it, right? And am I spending it on the things that I absolutely need? So money ultimately provides, I guess in some ways, our needs. But then, where am I spending money on my wants? So, in my opinion, money has really 3 purposes, right? To handle the things that I need, to acquire the things that I want, and it's important that I distinguish the 2. But then third, to grow. To grow so I can take care of myself based on the money I make today, tomorrow, if in fact, money becomes scarce. So, I'm excited now to go ahead and begin introducing my guest, who's going to cover the 5 fundamentals of money with us this morning. And again, this is one of those segments, this is one of those shows where if your friends and loved ones aren't listening, you might want to go ahead and send them a text and say, hey, Linal's talking about money today. And check this out. Because ultimately, you guys know my purpose is your success. My purpose is to make sure that you can live the absolute best life possible. And here's one of the things that I know. That if you don't have money, it becomes incredibly difficult to live the best life possible. So with me this morning is Tanya Van Court. Tanya is the founder and CEO of Goalsetter. And Goalsetter is a family-saving financial literacy and smart spending app that makes it easy for the whole family to go cashless and learn how to be money smart. Goalsetter is like Nickelodeon meets fintech. And it combines the best of fintech companies like Acorn, if you guys know about Acorn, which is a fairly new investment app that rounds up the change that you have left and then takes that change so you can invest it. And Cash App that many of us use to exchange money electronically through the technology of our phones. And what she's done is she's combined this to create family and financial education and gaming that appeals to our entire family. As such, Goalsetter is the first money app for the whole family, giving children from the cradle to graduation healthy financial habits that will last a lifetime. One of the main reasons I wanted to bring Tanya Van Court on is because when you think about money, I believe money is a family conversation. Welcome to the show. Good morning, Tanya. How are you?
Good morning, Linal. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm doing well. I'm excited to have you on this morning talking the fundamentals of money. Money. So first, Tanya, I shared a bit of your bio there, but can you share just a little bit more about this Goalsetter app? And more than anything, what inspired you to start this?
Well, it's so funny. When people ask me what inspired me to start Goalsetter, I have to look at moments in time in my own life. And so I'm going to share three with you very quickly.
Okay.
The first one is that I was born and raised in Oakland, California. My mom was an elementary school teacher and a single mom of 6 kids. I lost my mom when I was 6 years old because she had a brain aneurysm. And so my aunt took all 6 of us. So she went from 1 to 7 overnight.
Wow.
And so my DNA is all about raising other folks' kids, rather, because that's what I saw in my family, right? My mom used to bring home more kids on the weekends because she was a teacher in Oakland. My aunt took in 6 kids who were not hers. And so I care deeply about children and making sure that every children has the opportunity to achieve the greatness that they were meant to achieve when they were put here. So that's the first thing that I would say was pivotal in my life that led me to this path, truly, because the reason I'm doing this is, probably not the reason that most entrepreneurs start businesses. It's because I deeply care about children.
Got it.
The second is when I was in my late 20s, I had more than $1 million in stock and stock options. I was a graduate of Stanford University at this point. I had 2 degrees in industrial engineering. I had a fantastic job in Silicon Valley, and they had given me all the stock, given me all these options. And I had no idea what stock or stock options were, how they worked, or how to have them grow. And so in 2001, when the big technology bubble burst, I lost all of that $1 million in a matter of hours.
Oh, wow.
That's what I said, too. Linal, were you there? That's what I said.
Wow. Well, I remember that time, but I was broke, so it didn't impact me the same. But wow.
Well, it didn't. Yep. And so at that juncture, I made a promise to myself. I said, well, Tanya, that was very stupid. You can't go back and turn back the hands of time, but you can make sure that doesn't happen to your own kids.
Yeah.
And I didn't have kids yet, but that was the promise I made to my future kids. So my third point on my journey that led me to starting this app was that by the time I had kids, I started teaching them about money very early. My daughter, Gabrielle, when she was 3, I used to play the money game with her, pull change out my pocket and have her name the coins. And if she could name them, she could have them.
Nice.
So fast forward until she was 8, and she said, Mommy, for my 9th birthday, I really only want 2 things. And I said, what's that? And she said, enough money to save for an investment account and a bike.
Wow.
And I looked at her in that moment, and I thought, if I can get every kid to say that, I can change the world.
Man, if my son says that when he turns 9, let me tell you, I'm gonna do a backflip. I'll be so happy. That's beautiful.
Well, he is, Linal, because he's going to be on Goalsetter.
There we go. Well, he already is on Goalsetter.
There you go.
Yeah, he already is.
And truly, that was the intent. I mean, my intent was, I'm going to get every kid in America to say this. I'm going to get every kid in America to understand how to build wealth, to understand the language of money, to understand the value of a dollar, this is my purpose. In that moment, I really felt like God had shown me this is what you're meant to do. I didn't want to do this. Being an entrepreneur is hard. Raising money is hard. All of those things are really difficult. But I really felt like God said, this is what you need to do because I've given you special talents and gifts to help our children in mass get to where we need to be, to start a movement in mass. So.
Well, hey, I'm excited to have you on the show. Now, I got to ask you, you could tell me, hey, Linal, that's way too personal. But even in terms of, the fact that you did have $1 million in options at, such a young age, if I may ask, how was that acquired? I have an idea of how it was acquired, but how was that acquired?
It was literally given to me, Linal, right? And I was working at this startup company. I was very good at my job.
Okay.
And I had worked at a number of other companies before where I had done, transformational work, turning around. I'd worked at the telephone company and had done this amazing transformational work, turning around their operations. And then this company was starting in Silicon Valley, and they needed someone who was seasoned, who could scale their operations. They were a relatively new company, but doing very well. So, so they hired me and they gave me all of this stock and these options. And because the company was doing very well, that stock and those options continued to appreciate. And I that's right. And I saw them going up and thought what goes up could never go down. Mistake number one. I also, had no idea that I should be selling those things the minute that they were able to be sold.
As soon as they
vest. Diversified.
That's right, yeah.
As soon as they vested and diversified. I had no idea. I thought, well, look at this. They're going up. They're going to continue to do this forever. It was the first stock I had ever owned. But, I think fundamentally it is one of those. That was also a lesson for me. Just because you're good at your day job doesn't mean that you're smart with money.
There you go. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I asked, because I think a lot of us, we will say, oh man, I would love if somebody gave me $1 million, right? But do you know how to keep it? And that's one of the things that you and I are going to be talking about. As a matter of fact, I believe when we dive into the fundamentals, that's one of your first fundamentals, not necessarily in terms of fully understanding how stock and options work, or company options work, but ultimately, how do we keep our money? So please, if we may, I'd like to go ahead and dive into the very first fundamental.
Let's do it.
All right. So what would you say in terms of the top fundamentals when you think about money, as someone who is, who owns financial app for families? By the way, you all, I believe, is this the only financial app, African American owned app for families? Is it the only
There are a couple more, and I'm going to give shout outs to Capway and Sheena Allen. I'm going to give a shout out to Mochify and Wole Coaxum. So check those out. Those are a couple of the other African American owned fintech apps. Sorry, that's in general, not for families. Those are for adults. So feel free to check those out. But yes, Linal, to your question, this is the only African American owned fintech app for families. So some of you may have heard about Greenlight, the debit card,
right?
Or Step, the debit card. Those are other debit cards for kids. We have a debit card for kids too, but we have so much more, and we are the only ones that are African American owned. So thank you for giving us that shout out. We've actually, gotten less than 50 times the funding that those counterparts that I named have gotten. And yet we've managed to build a product that's the best one on the market. So I'm really excited to talk to your listeners today.
Yeah, and let me tell you all, I've downloaded the app. I already have Legend. He already has his little account in the app that I can transfer money into that allows him the opportunity to spend money, right? And kind of use that money in different ways. And I'm still learning a little bit about the app, but I absolutely love it. There are financial quizzes in the app. So as we're talking about financial education, I'm just going to encourage you guys to get on your phones, go to Google Play, go to the App Store on your iPhone and download Goalsetter as we goal setter. To be very, very clear, Goal, goal setter, to your phones, so you can download this for you and your families. As in many ways to support Tanya as she supports us in this educational process from the fundamentals of money. All right, Tanya, fundamental number one.
So, Linal, I got to tell you, my fundamentals of money were actually all provided by my grandmother. And she had an 8th grade education. She was born and raised in Oklahoma. But her father was a preacher. And so, they had a little bit of money because her father had a good job as a preacher in town. And so my grandmother, while she didn't have this expensive education, she had so much good common sense. And I got to tell you, if I had listened to her, if I had understood her words better and how they translated to the stock market and diversification and asset allocation, I would have never lost that $1 million. So we're going to go back to what Hardy May Bennett would have told all of us about money. And so number one, that my grandmother said all the time, don't let money burn a hole in your pocket.
Woo! Okay. Yeah. Don't let money burn a hole in your pocket. So why not? I mean, isn't money? I mean, I get my money. One of the things I hear all the time is I work so hard, I got to enjoy my money. Like, so why not? Why shouldn't I let money burn a hole in my pocket? I mean, isn't it a tool? I'm supposed to use it, right, Tanya?
You are supposed to use it, but not all of it. And by the way, I'm sorry, that's wrong. You are supposed to use it, but the question becomes what you use it for.
Oh.
And using it for things that are meaningful for you and your family. I tell, I give a talk to kids all the time, and it's funny, I call it Building Wealth, a 4-part mini-series inspired by Jay-Z. And I use Jay-Z lyrics and quotes throughout to explain to these kids the principles of money.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talk about is Jay-Z says, used to buy all those V12 engines, wish I could take it back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And why? I mean, he's a billionaire. Why would he say that? Well, he says that because he wasted that money. That money that he spent on V12 engines could have gone towards stock or real estate or artwork or any of these other kinds of investments that Jay has made to make him a billionaire. That money that he wasted could have gone towards that to increase his wealth. And so when I talk to kids, I say, you may think that you're not going to have to save when you get older because you're going to make so much money you can spend everything you want to spend. You don't have to worry about a budget. You don't have to worry about not spending on all those V12 engines. I said, but let me tell you, the truth of the matter is there are 3 people I'm going to show you. Johnny Depp, Mike Tyson, and MC Hammer.
Oh.
All 3 of them made millions of dollars.
Oh.
And guess what they all have in common?
They broke.
They all went bankrupt.
They all went bankrupt. They're not all broke now. They figured it out.
That's
yeah,
right.
They figured it out, but they all went bankrupt at one point.
They all went bankrupt at one point. That's right. So that's what happens when you let money burn a hole in your pocket, right? You spend everything that you get on things that are not real priorities for you, right? The red bottom shoes, not a priority, y'all. I have to tell you. You can take that $800, that $1,000, and go buy some stock with it. And that, $1,000 that you spend on stock can double in the next 7 years. And you can be building a nest egg for yourself and for your family. You can start saving for your emergency fund. Every single one of us should have an emergency fund of at least 3 to 6 months of our expenses. And I will tell you, 60% of African Americans do not have an emergency fund funded at that 3-month level. So we first need an emergency fund. Then we need to be investing in stocks and growing and building our wealth. And if you spend every dime that comes into your pocket, we can't make those things happen. And those things are important. They're important for you to stay out of debt, right? If you don't have the emergency fund, then when you have an emergency, what do? You put it on a credit card. And when you put it on a credit card, then you're in debt and you got to climb out of that debt. So we've got to get that emergency fund funded. We've got to start investing. And we have to begin building wealth for ourselves and for the next generation, for our community. African Americans are projected to have a negative net worth by 2053, Linal.
What? I didn't know that. We're projected to have a negative net worth? Because I know the net worth, like the accumulated net worth across all African Americans, if I'm not mistaken, is between like $2 to $3 grand.
That's right. And it's projected to go negative by 2053.
Wow.
And this is a reputable report that has studied, kind of net worth amongst different communities. And that number keeps me up at night.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's alarming. And I want to dive into, negative net worth, because I know a lot of people are like, well, how do you have a negative net worth? I mean, how do you get under zero? And I think you just pointed it out.
Broke, right?
Yeah. I mean, because that's under broke. I mean, that's broke. Like when, I mean, think about it. I don't have any money and my net worth is negative, meaning that I owe money.
I owe money, and I don't have any in the bank, and I don't have any assets. That's what that's saying, right?
Yeah.
Like I have an asset, but I owe more than my asset. I have a house worth $100,000, but I owe $150,000. That's a negative net worth.
So, I mean, let's talk about how that happens, because I think in some ways you just covered it a bit, like how that happens. And here's a scenario I heard from you, and I like to just kind of dive into it. I like to use examples to bring color to these type of situations. But I heard you say, all right, one of the things that we want to do is we want to make sure that we don't, like, money doesn't burn a hole in our pocket. And part of the advice you gave us is to save. We should have money put away for a rainy day, an emergency fund. You said 3 to 6 months. I think you're being kind. I tell people 6 months, nothing less, right?
Good for you.
I mean, so 6 months, nothing less. I mean, you shouldn't be buying any luxury items. You shouldn't be doing anything outside of your needs until you have 6 months put away. But
that's right.
What I'm hearing is the importance of that. The importance of that is, if I don't have that money put away and I have an emergency, I'm going to use a credit card.
That's right.
And not only, so let's say, I have an emergency, and Tanya, you're the auto mechanic, my car goes down, I got to pay you $2 grand for that car. What I'm hearing is that $2 grand, now I'm under $2 grand. If I had saved it, then I'd maybe be at, net zero, which is better. But the thing we're not thinking about are credit cards and the interest rates on credit cards. So I just dropped.
Oh my goodness.
So I just dropped about $2 grand, right, to you you're the mechanic for my car. But if I can't pay that back quickly, now that $2 grand is getting hit by compound interest on the APR of the credit card debt of whatever my card is, which is typically above 24%. So that's what
Let me tell you.
Go ahead, please.
It's like you're reading my mind, Linal, because that's the example that I give when I'm talking to college kids in particular all the time. I'm like, hey, you over there at FAMU, you're kicking it. Spring break rolls around and all your friends are going to Howard to hang out for spring break. And you want to go too, but you don't have any money. Mm-hmm. So you say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and use this credit card and put that trip on this credit card. It's only $2,000. And, I say this all the time. I say credit cards are like a sometimey friend. And debt is like a friend that you don't want anymore, but it won't go away.
Right. Right. Because that trip is going to cost more than $2,000 in the end. Might cost you $3,000.
Let me tell you. No, that's funny. So I say, I give them the example, 18% APR. Not even more than 24. Like,
look at you. You're so kind. You're so kind.
I'm kind.
Yes.
I know I'm trying. It's Sunday morning, Linal. It's Sunday morning. I'm trying. So I say, look, what if you just pay back $10 a month? $10 a month as a minimum payment, right? A lot of these credit cards, they have you pay a very minimal payment because they want to keep you roped in, right?
Yep.
That trip, Linal, ends up costing $6,700. For that $2,000 trip. If you pay the minimum every month, that's right. And you have to make 30 years worth of payments if you pay the minimum. Whew. That's right. And so, yes, if we don't have that $2,000, and by the way, you also have me wrapping up the $2,000 because last year, the average emergency cost people roughly $2,000. I think it's between $2,000 and $2,300.
Mm-hmm.
The average emergency, and it is for hospital bills and cars. These are the things that we need to survive.
Yep.
So your scenario, you like to tell stories. That story is dead on.
All right, I want to tell. I want to tell one more story. So I had a friend reach out to me not too long ago. I drive an Audi. Okay. So I had a friend reach out to me not too long ago and say, "Hey, Linal, I want to buy my child an Audi." And I said, "Okay. Yeah, it's a used Audi. It's a great price. Do you have lots of problems with your car?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. But when I do, it's not cheap, right? So I don't think you want to do that, right?" And they're like, "Oh, I think it'd be a good look. We can use it as a second car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." I'm like, I'm telling you, like, you don't want to buy a luxury car unless you have luxury money and you have money put away that you can spend if the car happens to stop. I can't tell you how many friends of mine early on had bought Range Rovers. Range Rovers aren't that reliable.
I have been wanting a Range Rover my whole life now.
Yeah.
And you know what it's like? For me, it's like when I was in college and that fine dude who played on the football team, I'm not going to name him. Y'all who went to Stanford with me know who he was. But, that fine dude who played on the football team, I was like, I don't know. He's a little trouble. I think I'm going to stay away. And that's what the Range Rover is like for me, Linal. I've wanted a Range Rover for my whole life, and I'm like, I have to stay away. I don't care how much I want it.
Right.
It's a big maintenance expense.
It's horrible.
Nope, not doing it.
It's horrible. It's horrible. And I can't tell you how many of my friends in their late 20s bought that car because they thought they could. But they're like, I can afford the payment. What they didn't account for were the additional expenses, and so this expensive vehicle was now sitting on the street or sitting in the garage because they couldn't afford to actually keep it running. And I think so when you look at your fundamental number one, like, don't let money burn a hole in your pocket. What I love about this fundamental is that what I'm taking from it is not only will this fundamental support you in saving money, but it will support you in not losing money long term.
Absolutely. It's not just about saving money. It's also about, if we don't, being poor is expensive, right? We've all heard this.
Yeah, man.
Being poor is expensive. And not having an emergency fund is expensive.
Yep.
So if we don't save for that emergency fund, we are just going to lose more and more money because then you're constantly borrowing from people in order to make up for the fact that you didn't save it from the beginning.
All right, so we got about 8 minutes before we have to go to break. Let's hit fundamental number 2. What is fundamental, like the second fundamental of money that you want to share with us this morning?
Well, this is one that we have all heard, and I sure wish I had understood this before I lost that $1 million. This one is, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I mean, if I had said, oh, my goodness, I have this $1 million in stock and stock options, but it's all in this one company's stock. This is crazy, Tanya.
Yeah.
Then the minute I was able to sell that stock, the minute it vested, I would have sold it. I would have bought a mutual fund. That mutual fund would have represented some technology stocks, some entertainment stocks, some retail stocks. I mean, stocks in all these different sectors, some automobile stocks, right? There are all of these different sectors, and a mutual fund basically is like a basket of Easter eggs, where one of them is red and one is pink and one is yellow and one is blue. And so if somebody comes along and says, I'm taking all the blue eggs, you're still straight because you have yellow and green and pink and red.
That's right.
But for me, I had nothing but blue eggs in my basket. So when the god of the technology stocks came around and said, I'm taking all those blue eggs, boy, I was out of luck.
Whew. That had to be a tough hit to take in your early 20s.
Oh my gosh. It was my late 20s. And so I should have been, a little bit more
Okay,
Yeah, a
your
little
late
more
20s.
mature and a little bit more grown, but it didn't matter. I was, yes. Look,
You know,
that's a tough hit to take at
yeah,
any point.
but and you know what? I would say that, you know, I know for me, I was the first in my family to go to college. I was also the first to get kicked out. But I was also the first to, you know, get to a corporate level where I obtained a role where part of my pay was options. And I remember the first time I got my first option payout, and I was kind of like, what do I do with this? And just very much like you, I didn't know. I didn't know. And I'll tell you something, thank God for people like you, because that's who I leaned on to educate myself around these type of things. So again, thank you for being on with us this morning and sharing this idea. Now, let me tell you something I did yesterday. I kind of figured this diversification thing was going to come up. And you and I, you know, we had a conversation earlier in the week. And so I asked myself, I said, okay, how diversified are we in my family? And I just want to give an example to people in terms of how diversified we are. And by the way, I didn't even realize this myself, Tanya. But overall, when I look at how our money is displaced, or not displaced, but placed in different accounts and diversified, we have over 25 different places where that money sits in our home. I mean, whether it's, you know, in cryptocurrency or whether it's in one brokerage over here, over 25. And I'm gonna tell you something. I never realized that until I did the math in anticipation of this conversation. I think you are 100% correct when it comes to diversification. I can't agree with you more.
You know, when you look at the whole presentation that I give about Jay-Z and the fact that he is a billionaire, right?
Yeah.
The whole reason I give the presentation is I say, look, he's a billionaire. He can provide us with a blueprint, pun intended, for all of you who are Jay-Z fans.
Nice.
He had the album called Blueprint.
Right.
But I say he can provide us with a blueprint for how to become a billionaire. And when you look at his holdings, right, one of the things he says is, I can't remember the exact lyric, but the gist of the lyric is, I bought this piece of artwork for $1 million. Now it's worth $2 million. Can't wait to give it to my children. Right. So it's artwork. It's, you know, he built the company, which is a streaming service. He, you know, started his own companies. He has real estate, obviously, all across the country. So when you look at every category that you can invest in, he's invested in startup companies. He's invested in the stock market. He's he has invested in artwork. Sorry, my 4-year-old just woke up and peeked in, and so I was looking at him at the same time. But so look, he's invested in all of these different categories. And the funny thing that I tell the folks who I talk to is, only 20% of Jay-Z's money came from rapping.
Man.
20%.
And I think that's a great example of why diversification is important. Because what I'm hearing you say is, here is a rapper where only 20% of his money is coming from his albums. The rest of it is from his diverse portfolio of that he's using to build wealth. And
that's right.
And what I'm taking from that is that's a great example for the rest of us. I mean, we need to be thinking about, like, how do I diversify my money? And I love the example of blue eggs, red eggs, yellow eggs, and making sure that not all of my eggs in terms of my money is one color. It needs to be multiple colors, so that way, no matter what happens, I mean, we just took a hit in 2020. So no matter what happens, I still have some level of wealth I can fall back on. I think that's great. All right, real quick, we're about to go to break. I'm talking to Tanya Van Court, CEO and founder of Goalsetter, which is African-American owned family financial savings app. Please go download it at Google Play and at your Apple iPhone app store by just putting in the search bar Goalsetter. And then, if I'm not mistaken, there's a logo of an owl, right, that they can be looking out for. that will pop up.
That's right.
Yeah. Rook, why did you use the owl? We got about 60 seconds. Why did you use the owl as a logo? I'm just curious.
Look, we offer for kids a savings account, a teen and tween debit card. So your teen and tween can get a debit card. But fundamentally, we are different than every platform in the market because we have these awesome financial literacy quizzes. They're all rooted in memes and GIFs from hip-hop artists, social media influencers, YouTube personalities, all the examples I give you now from Jay-Z. We do that and more because we want to make our kids smart. Every other financial app out there that's created for kids, they're teaching your kids how to send money and spend money, spend and spend, spend and spend. The core principle and value for me is that all of your kids become smart about money so that when they have that debit card in their hands, they're wise about how they use it.
Got it.
Not just using it.
Got it. Wisdom. I like it. All right, you all. You're listening to Inspirational Perspective. I'm your host, Linal Harris, your very own life coach right here on WVON 1690 AM, the talk of Chicago. When we come back, we'll cover her final 3 fundamentals of money. You don't want to miss these fundamentals, folks, because it's about money. And at the end of the day, money matters. We'll be right back. Don't change the dial.
Keep first with all the hot news trends.
All right, man. Tell me, guys, what do you guys think about the show so far? Man, good morning. Good morning. How are you? All right, I see you, Brandon. So, money, man. I had a fantastic conversation. Let me tell you something. You guys, you don't want to miss the next 3. What I asked her to do is kind of ramp it up. You guys know how I am. I'm like, let's give them the good stuff in the second hour. Let's just kind of build it up in the first hour. Good question. How does the app teach children to be generous, give within their means? So, the app has these quizzes, right? And the quizzes, what I love about the quizzes is they're fairly simple. And she uses pop stars, actors, actresses, people that will appeal to our children. And she puts them into scenarios, right? So one of the scenarios I saw was, Kelly Clarkson wants to buy X, Y, and Z. What type of purchase would this be? Would it be an investment? Is it a cost of goods? And so she just kind of breaks it down as multiple choice. And she uses, again, these pop stars and the things that they're doing to kind of pull the children in. And here's the really cool thing about it. So the account I have set up, basically, once Legend's old enough to begin reading, I can download the app onto, let's say, his iPad. And then every day, he can go in and he can answer these questions. And I can set a price, right? So I could say, give him $1 for every question that he gets right. And then basically, if he answers all 10 questions right, that's $10. So now I'm making him earn his allowance through financial literacy. So that's just one of the examples of how this Goalsetter app works, guys. It's phenomenal when you begin to think about, capturing our children at such a young age. Let me tell you the other reason why I believe what Tanya is doing is so important. There was an article in The Atlantic not too long ago that talked about how, and she talked about this, right? African American net worth will be negative by 2053. This article in The Atlantic was talking about how African Americans with means, right, who acquire wealth, typically in the second generation, all the wealth is lost because of a lack of financial literacy. So what I see Tanya doing is actually stepping like right in the middle of that, saying, nope, doesn't have to be that way. Yes, let's use technology. Let's use, how technology has become such a key player and how we think about the world. Let's use that technology with our children to begin changing that narrative of, Pam and I, we acquire wealth. We want to pass that down to Legend and the rest of our children to ensure that they have a great lifestyle. Because they're not financially literate, they lose the money, waste the money, and then the next thing you know, that wealth is gone, right? So I love what she's up to. I have her next 3 fundamentals here. Man, you guys are gonna love these fundamentals. And then what we'll do is we'll open up the lines for phone calls and take some phone calls and hopefully Tanya can answer any of the questions you guys have. Any other questions, make sure you copy and paste them. It's hard for me to see the questions during the show, you all. So copy and paste them right here. So during the break, I can answer as many questions as possible. Let me tell you all something. What we're talking about today, many of us fundamentally, I'm putting this, I want to put this the right way. We know it. Intellectually, we know it. But the problem is we don't believe it, right? And this is something I've been talking about a lot lately, about this whole, especially on Mondays for the webinar. So by the way, if you're not joining me for the webinar on Mondays, talk about a great investment of time. A free webinar coaching series where we're diving into these fundamentals and really helping you put your arms around these fundamentals in a completely different way from a coaching perspective. All right. But many of us know these things, like we've heard them before. We don't believe it. And the reason I say we don't believe it is because we don't practice it. When you believe something, you begin to apply it in your life, right? But when you think something is just theoretical and it doesn't apply to you, like you know it, like for instance, let's say I know this particular street in Chicago is dangerous, but I don't believe anything will happen to me if I drive down that street, which is why I go ahead and make the right turn and drive down the street, right? But the people who live on that block understand, like they completely understand how dangerous that block is, right? And if they didn't have to be on the block, they wouldn't, right? And so as a result, they don't even drive down the street. They may go out their back doors, out the garage, because they have a full understanding of how dangerous that street is. I think it's the same way with these principles we're talking about, right? With money. I know it, right? I know I shouldn't let money burn a hole in my pocket. I know I should, save my money, but I don't do it. I don't believe that I have to do it. And I think that's when we get slapped in the face by life, because we have, in many ways, these beliefs that we haven't addressed. And so as you're listening today, I would challenge you to, if you hear something, you're like, yeah, I know that. Okay, you know it, but do you believe it to your core? Do you believe it so much so that you're actually practicing it? That's what I would offer to you guys. All right, any questions, you all? Any questions? Is it possible for a child to have a stock portfolio? Yeah, Legend owns stock. The stock that he owns is in... Cool, all right. The stock that he owns is in both of our names, though. So basically, he owns stock. When I get this, basically the shareholder reports come in, it has both of our names on it. Right now, he's too young to vote on officers and things like that. And so I do all that for him. And then I take the dividends that he gets from the stocks and I put them into his account so it can just, grow over time. And then sometimes I might reinvest it for him, depending. So, all right, we're coming back.
Linal Harris on 1690, the talk of Chicago.
If you wanna be about it, come on, let's talk about it. Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and purpose. It's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Free your goals, live out the dream. Love is right now. Inspirational perspective. Open your mind to a better life. It's time to live. Let's find your purpose now. Inspirational perspective. Let's slay your goals, let your greatness flow. With inspirational perspective.
All right, we're back. You're listening to Inspirational Perspective. I'm your host, Linal Harris, your very own life coach right here on WVON 1690 AM, the talk of Chicago. On the live line this morning, I have special guest Tanya Van Court. Tanya is the CEO and founder of Goalsetter, which is an African-American owned family financial planning and savings app, also an educational app. Tanya, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Linal. I'm happy to be back with you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, man, I'm excited about these fundamentals. Just real quick, if you can cover the two fundamentals you shared at the top of the hour, and then we can go right into the third fundamental. By the way, you all, if you missed the first two that she's going to share, don't fret. You can always check the show out on YouTube later this week. It'll be up by Thursday morning. You can check it out there as well. But Tanya, so you share with us two fundamentals already. If you could just run back over those real quick, and then let's go into fundamental number 3.
Absolutely. So number 1 is, and by the way, for those of you who missed it, these are all fundamentals that were taught to me by my grandmother. So shout out to Hardy Mae Bennett. Number 1 is, don't let money burn a hole in your pocket. And that means you have to save first before you are buying luxury items. You have to save for an emergency fund. And all the time, you should pay yourself first. You should be automatically saving a certain amount of every ounce of money that comes into your paycheck. Or I'm sorry, that comes into your bank account, whether that's from a paycheck or whether that's from a gift. Any money you get in, you should automatically save that and pay yourself first.
Oh, so wait. Hold on.
Oh,
So
sorry.
if somebody gives me $100, you're telling me that I should just, go ahead and bless myself by putting some of that in my savings account. I mean, it was a gift. It was for my birthday. I want to put that whole 100 towards buying myself something. Or they might tell me, make sure you spend all this money on you. You telling me that some of that should go to savings?
Absolutely. And you know what? When they're telling you, make sure you spend all this money on you, you are spending all that money on you. You are, in fact, spending it on the most important part of you, which is giving yourself financial security. You are, and you didn't have that money in the beginning, so it is a gift.
So I'm still okay. I get it. I'm still spending it on me.
That's right.
And I think that's one of the things we have to think about when we think about spending money. That when I save money, I'm spending that money on my future security and success. I love it.
That's right. That's right. You're actually spending that money on your peace of mind, because we all know that when we have something tucked away and you don't have to worry about, oh no, my car broke down, how am I going to get it fixed? Oh no, I have this emergency medical bill, how am I going to pay it? You just bought yourself peace of mind with that money that you put away. So that's the best investment you can make in yourself.
Got it. Savings. Love it. All right. And then number 2 was?
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify your money.
Diversify. Absolutely. All right. So let's go ahead and move to number 3. What is fundamental number 3 that you learned from your grandmother in terms of how to handle money?
So number 3 is, the best money in life is free.
Say what? Yeah, I'm with you on that. The best money in life is free. So Tanya, where can I get free money? Where can I get free money?
Well, Linal, let me tell you, when my grandmother was alive, she worked at the post office. And she used to always tell my sister and I, you all have these fancy jobs. You need to find yourself a job with a pension. And my sister and I would hee, ha, 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 because we had these jobs making much more money than my grandmother had ever seen. And we weren't quite familiar with a pension or why this pension thing was so important when we were 23 and 24 years old. And it turns out that my grandmother was absolutely right. And they don't offer jobs anymore with pensions. That's very rare. If you're a firefighter, you got a good pension. If you're a police officer, you have a good pension, but there are not very many jobs that offer you a pension. So we're all saving for our own retirement.
And let me, to that point, real quick, if I knew now if I knew back then what I know now about pensions, I would have been taking somebody's firefighter test.
Man.
I'm so serious. Like, I just didn't understand. Yeah, I don't think any of us really understood the power of a pension And I could still be doing the work I do. I just be in the firehouse 24 hours. I mean, and have the
2 days
48
a
off.
week.
Right,
2
yeah.
days a week.
And have the 48 off.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
But-
be done after 20 years. Right?
Man, such a
That's
powerful. Okay, so what else? What else? Like how
That's
else
right.
can we get free money?
So, corporations may not offer you a pension anymore, but they do offer you retirement benefits. They offer you matches on your retirement benefit, and that's free money. When they say, okay, well, when you are saving $200 a month, we will match that, or we'll match some portion of it. That's free money.
Yep.
And
Yep.
we have to take advantage of every ounce of that free money we can get. Some corporations now are also matching your student loan repayments. So if you are repaying student loans, you should ask your employer whether or not they have a matching program to help you repay those student loans.
Wow.
The free money is so important.
Let me tell you something. On a personal level, that is how I grew a great deal of my wealth. I mean, I only worked in this. I think this is a great example. I only worked in corporate America for 16 years. But the entire time I was in corporate America, this is one of the things my mom taught me, and I'm so grateful, is I maxed out my 401k. I maxed it out. I maxed it out.
That's right.
And then when I left, like you said, when you can fully vest and you can move things around, I moved it all into another vehicle, right? That would grow outside of those company stocks and things like that, because I didn't have the same confidence in those organizations as I did when I worked there. And so I moved all that money, but now it's become a very powerful vehicle that my wife and I now, we combined it, and it's become a very powerful vehicle for our retirement when we make that choice. We have so many options. And part of the reason we have those options because we followed this fundamental. We took advantage of all of the free money that these organizations were willing to give us. And that's, I believe, one of the big mistakes we're making, likely because of what you covered in number one. I'm letting the money burn in my pocket, and so I'm spending everything I get, and I want it all, versus maxing out and making sure I take full advantage of any program that's providing me free money. I love it. Love it, love it, love it.
And, I think it's beautiful that your mom helped you to understand that, because the sooner you take advantage of the free money, the sooner you take advantage of the compound interest that's going to grow all of that free money.
Man.
When you max out your 401k the minute you get out of college and get your first job, you are giving yourself such an advantage. I give kids this example all the time. Mm-hmm. There are two people, Linal and Tanya. Linal decides when he gets out of college that he's going to save $5,000 a year for the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. And so Linal saves, he out of pocket, he is taking $50,000
right.
over that 10-year period. Okay.
Right.
Tanya says, no, I just got out of college. I kind of want to kick it. I'm not going to save right now. I'm going to wait for 5 years. And then Linal, I'm going to do the same thing that you did, but I'm going to save $10,000 every year for 5 years. So it's still $50,000 out of my pocket, but I'm going to do it for 5 years instead, and then I can kick it for 5 years. Well, guess what? At the end of that 10-year period, who has more money? Is it Linal to save $5,000 a year, or is it Tanya who had to try to play catch up to save $10,000 every year for that 5-year period?
Well, it's going to be me. I started earlier.
It's going to be you.
Yeah.
You started earlier.
The magic of compound interest.
The magic of compound interest. That's right. And so if we start maxing out that 401k very, very early, we are maxing out our opportunity for that compound interest.
So let me ask you this: do you consider compound interest free money? Like when you, with this particular fundamental, when you talk about, fundamental number 3 is the best money in life is free. So then how I think about my money, should I be thinking about my money from the perspective of I need to capture as much free money as possible, which means I need to be saving as much as possible so I can take advantage of compound interest. Is that part of what you're saying here?
Absolutely. Compound interest is definitely free money, right? You are sitting on your couch doing nothing, and your money is making money for you. But you can only take advantage of that if your money is invested, if you didn't spend all of your money, if you took advantage of your employer's matching programs and maximized your 401k. If you did all of those things, then you have an opportunity to sit on your couch and make money. And that's free money.
I love it. Now, I want to share a little tip with the listeners in terms of how I've thought about these things, because one of the decisions I made early on is I decided, you know what? When I look around and I see people, I notice nobody really scoffs at young broke folk. You get where I'm going? They don't really, like when you're young and you're broke, nobody pays attention to you. It's kind of like, well, he's young, he'll figure it out. But I did notice that the people around me, at least the mature people around me, they didn't really appreciate the people their age that were broke. Like, as a child, you pick up on things. So-and-so is walking into the house like, oh, here we go. I don't have no money for him. I'm telling you, I don't have no money. I hope you don't add. And so you kind of pick up on that, like, yeah, they don't like, older people don't like broke people that's their age. I just kind of picked up on that.
That's true.
So what I decided is if I can figure out how to live a tough life in my early 20s and 30s, like I'm just going to scrape by. And I'm saying this to anybody that's young out there. Because I know we live in this hip hop culture where it's, throw money that. I'm going to tell you right now, if you in your 20s, you don't have a lot of money. Now, there might be a few people who own tech companies in their 20s who are actually multimillionaires. But for most of us listening, if you in your 20s and you made your first, you making 70 grand a year and you feeling yourself like you ain't making no money, I'm telling you, live poor. Because you say it. Go on and say it.
I was going to say, live at home with your mama if she'll let you.
If she'll let you. Yeah, I'm with
If she will let you live at home with your mama, because I will tell you, if you met me in my 20s and you said, yes, I'm living at home with my mother because I'm diversifying my portfolio and I've invested some right now in stocks and I'm also investing in startup companies and this is what my goal is, et cetera, I would be like, oh, sign me up. I'm on team you. So, you're not going to run away the right kind of woman by living at home with your mama if you're doing the right kinds of things with your money.
That's
I'm
right.
with you. Live broke. Sorry. Go, Linal, please.
Live broke. And here's the reason why. Because what I hear you saying, Tanya, is this fundamental, the third fundamental around free money. The more money you can put away, the more money you can invest, the more money that you can get growing when you're young, that money is going to give back to you exponentially when you mature. And this is the way I think about it. This is the way I thought about it in my early 20s. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep driving this old Chevy Lumina that every time it hit a bump, the whole car jerked, my whole body jerked, boom, right? Because guess what? My 20-year-old body can take it. But I know one day when I'm in my 60s and 70s, I don't want to feel them bumps. That's going to hurt. And I want to make sure I put my money away so I can drive high and roll easy. And that's kind of how I thought about it. And I use my money that way. And what I'm hearing you say is this is absolutely what we want to do. And more importantly, we want to capture as much free money as we can. And there's more free money available to young folks than there are to old folks. That's just the truth.
That's true. And Linal, that example that we just talked about where I said, if you save $5,000 a year for 10 years, and I don't do that, I wait on the free money, and then I start saving $10,000 a year for the last 5 years. At the end of that 10-year period, if we just assume average returns from the stock market, et cetera, so now you'll have $79,000, and I'll have $71,533.
Wow, I got it.
You'll have 79, and I'll have 71.5.
And that's if you stop it right there.
And that's if you stop it right there. But also, listen, you really had to try to catch up with me those last 5 years. You were really struggling to save that $10,000.
Right.
I saved a cool $5,000 every year. And, I wasn't struggling those last 5 years to try to get $10,000 out of my paycheck.
Right.
We've got to understand how this free money and this compound interest works, and that the time value of money is very, very serious and very real.
So,
and can make you rich.
So how do we extend this to our children, right? Because I know my wife and I, we've already extended this to Legend in many ways in terms of the type of life insurance policies we bought him, the type of savings accounts that we've set up and diversifying his overall financial situation. How would you, what if I'm listening and I have children, I want them to take advantage of this free money we call compound interest, right? And I like how we're using that. I like that a lot. Then how would I go about that? Are there a few tips that you can provide parents with their children outside of, number one, go download the Goalsetter app? So I'm gonna take that one from you. Yep. Download the Goalsetter app. That's going to help. But what are a few other tangible things they can do?
Well, I think it's exactly what you said, Linal, right? When you are looking at what your children need for their future, your children need a few things. Number one, your children need to understand the difference between short-term needs and long-term needs, short-term goals and long-term goals. Now, in Goalsetter, they can set up multiple goals, both short-term and long-term, and they can have family members and friends contribute to those goals. And by the way, that's diversification in and of itself. Oh. If your kid is saving for on Goalsetter an Xbox, but they also have a fund in there that's a college fund, then on birthdays and holidays, what Goalsetter lets grandma and auntie and uncle and grandpa do is your kid has a link. They can click on that link and send your kid a $50 gold card instead of a gift card. And it literally is a digital card where auntie can upload a video that says, "Hi, baby, I'm sorry I couldn't be there for your birthday because of COVID, but here's $50 towards your dreams, $25 towards your college fund, and $25 towards your Xbox fund." Oh. That's diversification. Yeah. That, in and of itself, is helping your kids to understand that some of my money should be placed in short-term goals, and some of it should be saved for long-term goals. So that's the first thing that I would say, and it's super fun. Your kid, when they get the gold card, confetti flies down. It works on their digital device, their own phone or their iPad, etc. Nice. Right? It opens up, and they see grandma's video, and they see that money going towards different goals. That's the first thing. The second thing that I would say is Goalsetter actually in Q1 of next year is going to be launching an investment portfolio for kids and for families.
Nice.
That's right.
Nice.
And so not only will we enable you to have some of your money in savings, we will also enable you to have some of your money in investments and allow your kids to purchase a piece of stock, a share of stock, or a fractional share of stock, because, if Amazon stock is at $200, they might not be able to buy the whole thing, but they will be able to buy a fractional share of stock, or they will be able to invest in a mutual fund. And so that's what we're launching in the first quarter, and that should be a part of your kids' education. Now, again, the reason diversification is so important here, and I caution parents about this, and so we're being very thoughtful about how we roll this out, is I don't want your kid to put all of their money from savings that they've saved on Goalsetter into that investment account when we launch it. And then if the stock market tanks, your kid says, "Oh no, I hate the stock market. Yeah. I had $500 and now I only have $400. The stock market is not good. I will never invest in the stock market again." Right? You don't want kids to do that because they take those lessons hard. They don't understand that things go up and go down. Yeah. So they should keep some of their money in savings, those things that they are really trying to save for that are short term. That's what savings is for. So, even if they have some of that money in an investment account, and that investment account takes a little bit of a hit, you can tell them, "Oh, that's okay. You don't need this. You're not taking this out until you're 18 anyway. Don't worry about that. There are going to be ups and downs of the stock market, but don't worry. Let's keep this in there until you're 18. the probability is it's going to go up and not continue to stay down.
I love that. Teaching them patience over a long period of time. I like that a lot. That's going to be a really cool feature. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And then the final thing that you said is, you talked about life insurance. Mm-hmm. And life insurance is another great way to diversify assets for your kids so that you are paying into a life insurance policy that, as your kids get older, if they're not touching that policy, you and I talked about this the other day, Linal, mm-hmm. that policy can be worth millions in the future.
That's right. And the example that Tanya and I talked about was just how, for Legend in particular, we bought a high policy, and the idea of that policy is over time it continues to grow. And I shared the numbers with her. I'm not going to share the numbers not right now, but it grows. And if he doesn't touch it, he will be a multimillionaire at the age of 60. But however, if he does want to touch it, let's say he's like, hey, when it's college time, okay, I can take this out for college, or I can take this out for the things I need for college. He has that option. And he can begin learning how to use large quantities of money very early on. That helps us educate him as he's a teenager into his early 20s about how money works. That's one of the things we've done. Here's the other thing I'll say about life insurance. I think many of us believe that life insurance is something for the people after we die. Like it's after death. And life insurance today is a living product. I'll give an example real quick, and then I want to go ahead and get to number 4 with you, Tanya. But here's what I mean. So I'm an entrepreneur, and Tanya, you're an entrepreneur. Although I love the setting you have is probably not as much as mine. Yours is more residual, but I'm sure you're still doing the work to grow and build. But right now, my residual income is a smaller percent of what we bring in, both Pam and I, my wife. And so as an entrepreneur, it's important that I have not only a life insurance policy, but a life insurance policy that will pay me if for some reason I become disabled. So my quality of life doesn't change. I can still take care of my family. Like I use my brain, for most of what I do, for the radio show, for coaching. Let's say I bump my head in a car accident and I can't think as quickly, I can't move as quickly. Hey, I can still take care of my family. We can still live in comfort because all I have to do is file that claim with my life insurance policy. And I can pull down a very large percentage of my death benefit while I'm living to take care of me and my family. And so what I would say is talk to your life insurance agent. If you need one, again, give my mom a phone call. You can call my office. I'll pass the information on to her. My office number is 312-899-6245. But again, talking about wealth and diversification, life insurance is another one of those products. Make sure you're using life insurance to diversify your overall wealth portfolio. All right. Let's go to number 4. What is fundamental number 4?
This fundamental cracks me up because I can almost hear my grandmother saying it. And so I'm just going to give it to you in the way that she would have said it to me. She said, we're owning people, not renting people. Mm-hmm. And there was so much, again, I want everyone to understand my grandmother had an 8th grade education. And so when she said we're owning people, not renting people, the point for her was it doesn't matter how much education you have or don't have. It doesn't matter how much money you make or don't make. Being an owning person is all about a mentality.
Yeah.
My grandmother worked in the post office, and she sorted mail in the post office. She was, a clerk. And she used to say that there were other clerks who sat alongside her, and these clerks made the same amount of money as her, and they came to work in cashmere sweaters. So cashmere sweaters, I guess, was the 1930s version of, red bottom shoes today.
Right.
And she said she used to say to them, what do I need with a cashmere sweater? I need a house.
I know that's right.
And
I love it.
So that was so profound for me growing up, hearing her say that, because, the minute I got out of college, I rented for a couple of years. probably about 5 years, and I saved my money over that period of time. And when I was 27 years old, I bought my first condo, and I could hear in my grandmother's, voice, we're owning people. And the truth of the matter is that I bought a condo. I moved out of that location. It was in Portland, Oregon. And I only stayed in Portland at that job for about a year and a half. And then I moved, and I sold that condo. And if I had kept that condo and rented it out, that would have been a bonanza of money for me today, because that area that I bought in has just appreciated like wildfire in Portland, Oregon.
Wow.
And so part of what I would say is being an owning person is not just about owning your own home. It's about continuing to, own homes and own property that can be a part of your diversified portfolio. Home ownership is such a fundamental part of wealth building in this country. It is the major way that people accumulate wealth, through home ownership. So home ownership should be something that we all strive for.
So, Tanya, let me ask you this about home ownership, because there are some professionals or some thought leaders in the space who look at homes as liabilities. And so they'll tell people to rent. I can think of a few names. Grant Cardone is another. You probably know that name. He's one of them. Like, don't buy a house, rent. He'll say things like that. What advice would you give to someone who's caught in that conversation when it's like, well, do I rent or do I buy? Because often they'll say when you do the numbers, the numbers sometimes don't always line up. What advice would you give? I have a thought on it, but I'm curious. What are your thoughts on that when you say we're owning people, not renting people?
So I have a couple of thoughts.
Okay.
My first thought is just look at where wealth has been built in this country and who has accumulated that wealth and how they have accumulated that wealth. If you look at the wealth gap between black folks and white folks today, a significant percentage of that wealth gap is attributed to the lack of home ownership in the black community. And it's been a lack of home ownership because of racist financial policies amongst the financial institutions in this country, like redlining, that didn't allow for mortgage brokers to make loans in neighborhoods that were predominantly black neighborhoods, and didn't allow black people to move into neighborhoods that were predominantly white neighborhoods where those mortgages were being provided. And so all of these racist policies have prevented us from both A, owning homes, and B, owning homes in areas where those homes were accumulating and appreciating in value. And that has been one of the largest contributors to the gap between black and white wealth. Obviously, we know that other large contributors were, because of slavery, and the fact that, other people had inheritance that they could pass down and money that could appreciate because of compound interest. But home ownership has been a significant piece of it. So that's the first thing that I would say.
Okay.
The second thing that I would say is that when you own a home, I almost think about it as the Amistad. It gives you free. It sets you free. It gives you freedom, right? And I can attest to that, because I, at 42 years old, decided that's when I wanted to go and start this business. I happen to own a brownstone in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and my brownstone has 4 levels to it. And so I rented out the top 2 levels so that I could pay my mortgage and I could go and do this, start this company where I'm not making what I was making when I was making in corporate, when I was working in corporate America. And so owning that home gives you the ability to not have the cash outlay on a monthly basis, particularly if you own a 2-family home. I would encourage everyone, if you have an opportunity to buy a 2-family home, do that. Because after 10 years, after 12 years, you will find somebody else paying for your mortgage, and you are just living there. So those are all of the advantages that I see to home ownership and what the numbers have borne out over the past 50 years of the history of our country.
I love your answer, and I'll tell you, we're kindred spirits. Because I'll tell you, I have yet, in home ownership, I have yet to own a home that cannot produce a secondary income.
There you go.
Now, my wife and I are now looking to purchase a home that we will live in, and there's no secondary income. I'm 44 years old. I have yet, and so I love where because what I heard is, Linal, yeah, homes do bring wealth, and not only do I believe that, but I also own a home that has secondary and third abilities to bring additional income. I mean, so secondary income, third income, fourth income in terms of you're collecting rent.
That's right.
You're collecting rent. And I think often we get so caught up in what we see on television, right? Oh, they have the big house, they pull up into the drive and they got, all these things. We're not thinking about wealth creation. And if we're thinking about wealth creation, and I know for me, it was like when I first bought a piece of property that I was going to call home, it was a 2-flat. And I'm like, I'm single. Doesn't make sense for me to have a house all by myself. What I'm going to do is fix this up, put somebody on top of me, collect rent. And I've been practicing that for years.
Amazing.
Practicing that for years. And it brings with it a lot of financial freedom.
It does. And let me tell you the other thing. Those folks who have that big house that you're coveting, they're driving up into their driveway. I know because, as you said, I'm in my mid-40s, and a lot of those folks are my friends. And I can't tell you how many of my friends have said, wow, Tanya, I want to be an investor in your company, but I can't pull together that amount of money to invest.
Wow.
Right? A lot of folks who have the big houses don't necessarily have that diversified portfolio that we're talking about because the big house is using up their whole paycheck. So, when you hear people talk about, a house can be an encumbrance and a house is a liability. Well, if you have a house that is using up your entire paycheck, then you know what, Linal? They probably are right.
Yeah.
Then it is a liability because you can't find any other money in your paycheck to invest. You can't diversify because all of your money is going towards that mortgage. So, let's find a house that is not a liability. Let's find a house that's an asset. Let's find a house that's producing income. And there is no other way that you can live for free in this country other than what you just said, Linal. I own a 2-flat.
That's
or
right.
I own, a brownstone that has a 4-unit. That's right. And somebody else is paying my mortgage. That's how you live for free in this country. You can't live for free by renting. You can't live for free by owning that big house on your own. The only way you can live for free is by owning a 2-flat or a 3-flat or a 4-flat.
Yep. And I'm sure like people probably ask, well, how do people like you and I build wealth and leverage ourselves? I'm going to tell you, I have found that to be one of the biggest secrets. And I'll share this for anyone listening. If you are in the home buying process and this is your first home, you have a small family or maybe you're single, please, please, please think differently about the purchase of that home. Figure out a way to leverage yourself into a piece of property that can make income, because that is when that home is definitely not a liability. That is when it's definitely an asset. I love it. I love where you went, Tanya, because you use your asset of a home to launch your business. And without your home, there would be, what I'm hearing is, there would be no Goalsetter.
There would be no Goalsetter. And, and so owning this home allowed me to live my dreams. It allowed me freedom that I would not have had otherwise. And it is hopefully going to allow me to set so many other people free, right? We not only need to be able to do the good work for ourselves, we need to be able to do the good work for our communities. And, every single one of your kids who downloads Goalsetter, and I guarantee you within a year, they're going to be talking about compound interest and the rule of 72. I mean, this is what the kids who are on Goalsetter are doing. Yes, they have, their first bank account, their first savings account. They're saving for their goals. They are talking about financial terms that you won't even know. You'll have to, have them explain it or go on Goalsetter and play the quizzes yourself. But, because I owned a home, I can now go and set a whole generation of our kids free.
Love it.
Help them to become financially free. And that's what we all need. We need to be able to live our purpose and not have that monthly rent stopping us from our purpose.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, let's go to the last and final fundamental, which I believe is an incredibly important fundamental. What is the fifth fundamental of money according to Tanya Van Court and her grandmother?
So the fifth fundamental of money is credit cards are only good for credit scores.
Now let's dive into this. Credit cards are only good for credit scores. All right, what do you mean? Like, break this down.
So listen, when most of us think about credit cards, we think about, oh, that's free money. Credit cards are not free money. Credit cards are very expensive money, as we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So then why do all of the smartest, most successful money people in the world have credit cards? Well, they have credit cards because when you use your credit card wisely, your credit card contributes to a positive credit score. And so I tell, the young people who I talk to all the time, if you're in college, let me tell you what that credit card is for. It's for you to go buy groceries and for you to pay it off at the end of the month. Because when you do that, you will be telling all of the credit bureaus that you are a good credit risk. They will look at you charging something and paying it off in a timely fashion, charging something and paying it off in a timely fashion. And they'll say, hey, that Linal certainly knows how to borrow money and pay that money back in a timely fashion. And then guess what happens, Linal? When Linal gets out of college and 3 years later goes to buy his 2-flat, he now is going to get an amazingly low mortgage interest rate.
That's right.
Because he has proven himself to be a great credit risk.
Yep.
And when he gets that low interest rate, guess what? That means that he's going to be paying less money every month to the mortgage company, and it is more likely that the other part of his 2-flat that he's renting will be able to pay for his whole mortgage because he got a really low interest rate because he did not use that credit card to go into debt. He just used that credit card to build his credit score.
Beautiful. Man, that's a great explanation. Now, I have another question for you in terms of credit cards. How would you inform people to think about credit card cash back and credit card points? Because I get the primary use is for the credit score. Do points and cash back have any use at all for those of us that use credit cards?
Points and cash back are more free money in my book, and we should all take advantage of free money.
Fundamental 3.
Absolutely. And so cash back and points are fantastic, and you should be getting credit cards that are maximizing your opportunity for cash back and points. Those are free things. If I'm going to spend money anyway, and I'm going to use this credit card on things during the month that I know I can pay off at the end of the month, that's fantastic. It's somebody paying me money to do what I was going to do anyway. So, yes, we should optimize and maximize our credit cards and the points and the cash back that they will give us. And we should pay those credit cards back at the end of every month so we don't have to worry about the APY, the APR for those credit cards, right?
Right.
Because I'm paying my credit card back at the end of the month. So if it's a little bit higher of an interest rate, but it gives me a lot of cash back and points, that's fantastic if I use it how I should be using it.
So, again, I like to tell stories. So let me bring this whole the points and the system to life. But not just that. I love what you pointed to with the credit score. The credit card is a tool to create a higher credit score. And I think we really, if we can fundamentally absorb that, man, that's going to save a lot of us grief. But here's the second thing. In terms of points, I share this example often. But so I have a 3-year-old. He's potty trained now. But, up to about 2.5, he was in diapers or pull-ups. Do you know there's only one time I paid cash for diapers? One time. Because I use points. I use all the points that my wife and I accumulate. And the things we need, like wipes and diapers to take care of Legend when he was small, we used our points. And so we never stepped into our cash ever, except for one time I forgot to place the order and I had to run to Target and I actually swiped my credit card. Well, I got cash back or points on the credit card anyway, right? to get the diapers. That was one time. Other than that, they came in the mail and basically we used our points on Amazon to get diapers, wipes, all the things that he needed over time. And so I hear friends complain, oh, diapers are so expensive. And I'd be like, you don't use your points for that? You don't use, because it's free. Like you said, fundamental number 3, always, how you said, the best money in life is free. And I can't agree more. I can't agree more. So I have a question for you in terms of credit cards. It came from one of the listeners who's watching the live stream on Facebook. And what she asked is, can you ask Miss Van Court what order she would recommend paying off credit cards, debt, building an emergency fund, or investing in diversifying? Like, what order would you place those in? Paying off credit card debt, building your emergency fund, or investing in diversifying? And then I think it goes on here, it says, should you invest as you build your emergency fund?
Yes. So the order that I would place them in is the order of expensiveness of the money, right? That's how I think we always have to think about it.
I like that.
Right?
I like that.
So if I have credit card debt, that is the most expensive money out there.
Yeah.
I mean, credit cards are at 18%, 24% interest rate. This is, it really is like a loan shark. Let's be clear. It's like, somebody shaking you down every day or every month that you can't pay that full credit card back. And so it gets you into debt faster and faster and faster. So I would absolutely prioritize pay off that credit card debt first, because let's be clear. If you are saving, let's say you have $100, right? You have $100 at the end of the month, and you can decide either to pay off that credit card debt or you can decide to save it, right? If you decide to save it, then at today's interest rates, you're not getting anything off of that money. So a month from now, that $100 is still worth $100, right?
Right.
If you decide to pay off your credit card debt with that $100, well, a month from now, if you didn't pay off that credit card debt, you would, instead of owing $100, you would probably owe $104 or $105 a month from now, right? That credit card debt accumulates quickly, right? And 6 months from now, it would be $112, $113. So every day that you go by without paying off that credit card debt, you're getting yourself that $100. It is really, getting yourself into a worse hole, into a deeper hole more quickly. So that $100 is, my point, more valuable on the credit card debt side right now than it is on the savings side, right? So you pay off that credit card debt, because what's the worst that can happen? You pay off half of your credit card debt, you have an emergency, and then you need to charge some more credit card debt, but you've already erased half of this very expensive debt, right? So I would say you got to pay off that credit card debt first. Then you have to save for that 6 months of an emergency fund, and then you have to invest. And the reason it's in that order is because, again, credit card debt is most expensive. That's an expensive dollar. Saving for that emergency fund, if you don't have the emergency fund saved and you're putting all of your money into investments, some of those investments, you don't know what's happening in the stock market in the next year. We're in a very crazy place, right? So in a short-term way, those investments could, take a dip in the short term. And if you have an emergency, you can't go and take money out of what's supposed to be a long-term investment for your short-term emergency. Either you're going to be hurting yourself or there's not enough money there. So that has to be considered a long-term investment, right? So I would say credit card debt is the burning building. Your savings account is your short-term necessity, and investment is your long-term absolute referendum that you need. Okay? So that's the order.
Yeah. That's, wow, phenomenal answer. I I believe that the listeners, I'm seeing a lot of hearts on Facebook right now. They love that answer. Very, very clear. Incredibly clear answer on that. Any other questions you guys have, you can submit them on Facebook right now. Drop them in. I'll ask the questions. We got a few minutes left. One of the listeners on Facebook also made this comment. I thought this was really important in terms of the comment I made around using credit card points. And what they said is you have to know yourself and manage credit cards well. Studies show, on average, people spend more with plastic than with cash. I'm going to say because they're not budgeting, by the way. There's no budget in place, so you're like, oh, I'm going to get these red bottoms. And because, of course, my limit is $2,000 and they cost $1,600. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you have budgeted expenses, gas, groceries, using credit cards on those budgeted expenses, paying them off at the end of the month, then that is absolutely free money and points. But again, you have to have a system, folks. Otherwise, believe me, the credit card companies are giving you points and they're giving you cash back because they're making it on somebody else. You can best believe that. But in the Harris household, they're not making it on us. And so hopefully you all can run the same thing.
That's right.
Yeah. So what would you say in conclusion, Tanya? I mean, this has been a phenomenal segment. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom about finances, sharing vulnerably your lessons, your mistakes and your losses with us so vulnerably and openly. I want to acknowledge you for that. How would you wrap this up? What do people know? I mean, you shared the top 5 fundamentals. What are some other things that people need to understand and know about their money?
Look, because I'm all about the kids, I really have to end on the kids now. And the reason I have to do that is because we are in crisis as a community. This notion that Black folks are heading towards a negative net worth by 2053, it keeps me up at night. And the promise and the hope that I see is not only conversations that you're having right now with your listeners, we're going to turn this around for ourselves as grown folks. Mm-hmm. But look, for kids who have savings accounts in their name are 6 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to own stocks by the time they're young adults.
Wow.
And so if we know better, we can do better.
Yeah.
And we can do better for this next generation of kids. So that's why this Black Friday, we are launching a campaign to, instead of spending all of your money on Black Friday, get every Black kid or for every listener on here, every kid get them signed up for a savings account on Black Friday. Spend $25 or $40.
I like that. I love that.
A savings account for a kid in your life. Because if you do that, you are putting them on a trajectory that is very, very different than the trajectory that so many have been on in the past. You are setting them up for a lifetime of success. So, go to Goalsetter right now. Go open up an account for your own kid, for a niece, a nephew, a grandkid. You don't have to be the parent to open up an account for somebody else on Goalsetter, for another kid on Goalsetter. And I promise you, just having that account is going to change that kid's life. They're going to learn about saving. They're going to learn about delayed gratification. And it's for all ages, cradle to graduation, as Linal said. So, I'm not saying this because I'm plugging a company. I'm saying this because I am leading a crusade and a mission to get all of our kids into a different place in the next 33 years. 2053 and a negative net worth doesn't have to happen, but it's incumbent upon every one of us to make sure that we teach our kids differently. So go open up the savings account on Goalsetter. Let them have their first savings account. Give them I didn't say this, Linal. This is so fun. Our teen and tween debit card. So if you have a teenager or a tween or, you decided your kid is ready for their first debit card at age 8, it has a rule called learn before you burn that you can activate as a parent with one little click of a button. And what that means is your child's debit card will automatically freeze on Sunday morning if they haven't taken their financial literacy quiz for the week yet.
Oh, I like that. That's amazing.
And the minute they take that quiz, it unfreezes and they can use it again. It all happens automatically, so you don't have to worry about it as a parent. You don't have to go and teach financial education as a parent, but you do have to put the tools in our kids' hands that are going to help them to be successful. And that does not mean Venmo and Cash App that just teaches them how to send money and spend money and send money and spend money. We have to start teaching our kids the fundamentals. All of these fundamentals that we talked about today, we teach our kids by the time they're 18 on Goalsetter. They'll know all of this. So let's have these conversations. Let's open up and be vulnerable in the way that I was today.
Yeah.
Because if we don't share our mistakes, then those mistakes can never be lessons learned for our kids.
Wow. Well, Tanya, I want to acknowledge you for coming on with us. Again, you all make sure that you go out to Google Play, download Goalsetter, the Goalsetter app, or go to your app store on the iPhone and download the Goalsetter app. Tanya, I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with us this morning and giving us some financial literacy, sharing with us your 5 fundamentals of money and managing money. Thank you so much. To the listeners, I hope that this has, I love it when someone comes on and shares their purpose. And that's what this series has been about. People sharing their purpose from a place of fundamentally what they're experts at. Tanya Van Court is the CEO and founder of Goalsetter and a money expert. And I just thank her for her time. And as always, my purpose is your success. So please join us again next Sunday. If you haven't already, join me on Mondays for the free coaching webinar series. You can go to linalharris.com to register. Until next week, stay inspired. It's a lifestyle choice. Next up, Ernesto Borges with the Borges Report. God bless you guys. Have a phenomenal Sunday, a fantastic week, and a very happy Thanksgiving.
The talk of Chicago and the voice of the nation.
All right, you all.
1690 WVON.
That's the show. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, again,
Briefing, the president emerging.
share the stream, and share with others. Let them know what you learned today. This is a big deal, man. 2053, they're saying the African American community will be in a deficit in terms of our net worth, and we can stop that with the knowledge. Love you guys. See you tomorrow.